What is up, guys? Bobgar here, and it is closing thoughts time for $10 mono white death and taxes. We ended up going 3-2. I played a few more matches and went about 4-3, so it really felt like it would go about 50% against the field. And I think that's partly due to the way taxes decks tend to play. They tend to have some really, really good matchups where the things they're doing to stop their opponent matter, and then they sometimes have some really bad matchups where Aven Mindcensor just does almost nothing because they don't have fetch lands and they don't have other search effects. So the games depend a lot on having the right hate bears to hate out your opponent and then drawing the hate bears you need to hate out your opponent. A lot of times you can get down just an army of flyers and swing in for damage, but sometimes it just doesn't quite work out. Then I wanted to talk about the hits and the misses. So the misses here are a little scattershot, but I'm going to start with the hits. And it is the first time we've ever had a hit from the sideboard. I don't actually think he's that good or that we should bring him into the main board or anything, but Hushwing Griff in the games that we played, even the ones I didn't record and didn't put on camera, he was awesome. One of the other matchups I had that I didn't post was against Amaria, the Sky Ruin Sun Titan deck. And that's all like Wall of Omens, Flicker Wisp, Sun Titan, all of them have Enter the Battlefield effects, and Hushwing Griff just shuts them all off. So in the right matchups, like humans and allies and Amaria, even anything that runs Snapcaster, like I said, he's probably worth it over some of your other ones. He just becomes very, very good. Elves, like we saw, he's very good. Out of all of our matches, he has the most solid check. And then second to that is Hero of Bladehold. Hero of Bladehold just let us swing in for lethal a bunch of times. When it came down, it came down a little bit late. Our opponent a lot of times was out of removal because it used it on all our weenie creatures that were slowing it down in various ways. And it came in and it attacked in and it killed our opponent. So Hero of Bladehold did work. Archangel of Tithes might have been as good. It's hard to tell. We didn't draw it as much, so it's just when you don't see it, you can't tell whether it's as good or not. But Hero of Bladehold 100% wrecked it. And then Path to Exile just always felt good. It felt like we always wanted one in hand. Sometimes we wished we had two. We ran into a lot of decks like Elves where they really have one or two combo pieces that they just need to keep on the field. And then other than that, they have a bunch of dinky creatures that aren't a big deal. So a lot of times Path felt really good. And then the misses. I put Judge's Familiar on here just because I don't think he did very much for us. 1/1's just not a very big body for 1 mana. And his tax ability is nice, but you have to sack him. He didn't feel to me like he did very much. Dryad Militant also didn't, admittedly. I felt like we just didn't run into the decks where it was good against, and Student of Warfare in most cases was just better, but I gave the X to Judge's Familiar there. Next up, Spirit of the Labyrinth. This was probably of the X's the one that I felt was most deserving. First off, I didn't realize it was a Nombo with Smuggler's Copter. If you have Spirit of the Labyrinth out, you can't draw and discard from Smuggler's Copter because you can only draw one card a turn. So, yep, that's part of why it gets the X. I mean, admittedly, we could take out Smuggler's Copter too. That might even make more sense, but it just didn't. It never felt good to have. Like, there was no games where I felt like it was a powerful card. Again, a lot of these are matchup dependent. In the right matchup, Spirit of the Labyrinth could have been very good. And then Vryn Wingmare. I mean, I don't know. This was the most borderline. I did feel like it was pretty good, but it is just like a Thalia Guardian of Thraben that's a turn slow, and it doesn't have Flash, which a lot of our 3-drops have, which is really nice. I think that's probably the thing that more than anything that makes it hard to give it the check. Admittedly, we mostly wouldn't play it with Flash anyway, just because we want to get it out before our opponent casts a spell, and so you do kind of want to get it out as soon as you can. But yeah, that's the reason that Vryn Wingmare gets the X. It just didn't feel as powerful, and the fact that you had to... I mean, we would have kept it in hand sometimes just because we would have had the option of whether to play Vryn Wingmare or Aven Mindcensor or Hushwing Griff with Flash, and we ended up in situations where, well, if we wanted to play the Vryn Wingmare, we just had to run it out. Yeah, I don't know. All of it... Hate Bears is always weird because all of it felt good some of the time. The other thing that might be X-worthy is our lands. I can't remember how many of these games I recorded, but there was 2 or 3 games total where we just like super flooded out. It was ridiculous. And those were just really painful. So maybe the deck's just running too many lands. It doesn't really feel like it just because we have a few 4-drops. But I could see going down to 21 or 20. I think partly it was just bad luck, though. I don't know if that would be, on average, out of how many matches that would happen often. The other thing I did want to say for the deck is it felt like pretty much all of our matches were close. I can't remember I think they all went 2-1. Like, the ones we lost all went to 3 games, I think. And I think the ones we won might have all gone to 3 games too. So they all felt like we had a chance, which was kind of nice. It's nice to have a deck that's competitive and doesn't just go, oh, this deck straight up beats me, or, you know, kind of rolls over if it gets a terrible draw or something. And then I wanted to talk a little bit about the upgrade path. So this is a real deck, so there's a lot of different upgrade paths you can do. It kind of splits off into different decks. We're going to start along the road of wanting to keep it mono white. And then we'll go into white black, because I think that's the most common one right now, although I think both white green and white red can also probably be pretty good, and I think honestly probably white blue could be pretty good too. I mean, white's kind of the important one because it's where you have Thalia, but a lot of the other colors have options that are also good. So starting at the top, Aether Vial. Aether Vial is great in this kind of deck. It's really nice to be able to flash an effect that wrecks your opponent. You know, basically you're gonna get, if in a normal version of the deck you get other effects like Leonin Arbiter, and putting in a Leonin Arbiter in instant speed means your opponent usually just can't search at all when they try to break a fetch land. And you can also just put in creatures to block at instant speed. You have a lot of flyers, you got some first strikers, you got a lot of good stuff to flash in at instant speed and block. And you also have things like Flicker Wisp. If you put a Flicker Wisp in on your opponent's turn with Aether Vial, you can target one of their permanents and they will lose that permanent until their end step. So you can target their land and cut them off for a mana until your turn, basically. And plus they're running instants, it probably just cuts them off of a mana for that whole turn, which is kind of neat. So you can do cool stuff like that. Then it has a bunch of other synergies. Selfless Spirit is just a really good Wrath protection card. I think a lot of them run 1 or 2 of that. Blade Splicer is just great as a army in a can, and you can use things like Restoration Angel and Flicker Wisp to blink it and produce a ton of 3/3 first strikes, in addition to the already pretty big bodies of Flicker Wisp and Restoration Angel. And then, yeah, I want to talk a little bit about going black. That's mostly how I would change the white side of things, is add some subset of those cards. Probably go down Aven Mindcensors in favor of Leonin Arbiters. Maybe go down a couple lands in favor of Aether Vial. And then, yeah, some of the other 3 and 4 drops kind of go down for Restoration Angel, Blade Splicer package probably. Probably put in 1 or 2 Selfless Spirits over something like Spirit of the Labyrinth. But if you want to go black, there's a deck called Eldrazi Taxes. I actually have a version of it on Magic Online. I think I'm currently missing the Concealed Courtyards because I built it before those came out. But otherwise, I have basically a full budget black-white Eldrazi Taxes deck on Magic Online, and it's a lot of fun. I did some videos for Magic Gathering Strat back when I was over there on it. It has a lot of cool tricks it can do, even more so than Taxes. You can use Eldrazi Displacer to continually blink things, and then you can also do some really neat things with processing. So Wasteland Strangler is a card that lets you take a card from Exile and put it in a player's graveyard in order to give a target creature -3/-3. And you have a bunch of things that put things in exile, some of which your opponent theoretically could get back, but they can't get them back if you process them. So you can Flicker Wisp an opponent's permanent, and then Wasteland Strangler, kill one of his creatures with Wasteland Strangler's -3/-3, and then also put that exiled card in the battlefield. And then if you do that when it's end of turn and Flicker Wisp would normally give it back, it obviously can't because it's not in exile anymore. So you can do cool things like that. Same goes for Tide Hollow Sculler, which also takes a card from your opponent, takes one from their hand and not on the battlefield, but similar idea. And then, I mean, once you have an Eldrazi Displacer and enough mana, you can just blink Flicker Wisp, blink Wasteland Strangler, and just get rid of all their permanents. And Flicker Wisp can even hit things like lands, so you can just process all their lands into the graveyard eventually, and cool things like that. You also just get some pretty super powerful cards. Thought Knot Seer is very good. It's probably the best modern card from Oath of the Gatewatch, maybe from the whole Battle for Zendikar block, although there are some other good cards in there. But yeah, it's playing in pretty much every format. It's a 4/4 that when it comes into play, you get to look at your opponent's hand and take a card out of it, and then when it leaves play, your opponent gets to draw a card. But it's just a 4/4 beater for 4 with a super sweet ability. And what really makes the Eldrazi side of this powerful is, in addition to playing white and black like you normally would, you get to play these Eldrazi Temples, which are colorless lands, but they tap for 2 mana towards any of your Eldrazi. So Thought Knot Seer, Eldrazi Displacer, and Wasteland Strangler. And often you run a couple Reality Smashers in there too. I didn't have enough room to put him on here, but usually I don't run too many. He's just a beater basically, but he's a good beater. And then, yeah, Concealed Courtyard is the white-black fast land that just came out, and Caves of Kolios is the white-black pain land. So you can tap for a colorless for free, which is important for things like Thought-Knot Seer, which requires a colorless to be able to cast, and Eldrazi Displacer's activated ability to blink a creature also requires a colorless to be tapped. But then it can also just tap for white and black as you need it for, for a life, but it's not that big a deal. Yeah, I like Eldrazi Taxes a lot. I definitely think it's a little more honed than the deck we're running here, but the deck we're running here is pretty good. I mean, 3-2 is not bad against, mostly we ran into relatively good decks. We ran into a couple that were borderline. In fact, we lost to one that I think we lost to probably the worst deck we faced, but I think that happens a lot with taxes because you're not built to beat the worst deck. The worst deck doesn't run a lot of fetch lands, doesn't run a lot of cool non-creature spells for you to tax. It's like, a lot of times when you're running Death and Taxes style decks, you're really targeting the meta. So you're targeting the top tier decks that do a lot of cool tricks, and you try to basically say, oh, you had all these cool tricks you can do, we're going to try to stop you from doing them. I also want to say, even though I only went 3-2, I think this can be, even on a budget, an even better deck at something like a Friday Night Magic, especially if you have like a local store that only has 10 to 20 people who go there, and you kind of can figure out what all their decks are, because as we saw, because we have so many tools, post-board this deck gets way better, and you can tune both your main board and your sideboard for the field of people you're likely to play against. If there's 10 people who go to Friday Night Magic, and 2 are on Affinity and 2 are on Lantern Control, you can just mainboard the Leonin Relic Warders and kill all their artifacts, And if 2 of them are playing humans and 2 of them are playing allies, you can mainboard the Hushwing Grift. That card's amazing against them. It basically shuts down their whole deck for 3 mana. And so there's a lot of things like that where it's like, if you know who your opponent's going to be and the kinds of things they're going to be doing, you can target your hate bears, your taxes effects towards what those decks are trying to do. It's a little harder to do on Magic Online just because there's such a big pool of players, and they play, especially in the practice lobbies, they will play anything from like super top tier Death Shadow decks to Death Cloud and things like that, which are like kind of like not super good but fun, or they'll play these janky $10 decks that this guy called Bobgar comes up with. I don't know. So anyway, that's the deck for the week. I had a lot of fun playing it. I hope you guys had fun watching it. I felt a little behind this week. Unfortunately, I'm recording this closing thoughts the day before I'm posting it. I also felt like I made a ton of mistakes this week. I just played really sloppy, really bad, cast way too many things in my first main phase that should have been cast in my second main phase so I could present, kill spells or pumps. Played way too many flash creatures in my main phase that I should have played it into my opponent's turn. I just was sloppy all over the place. I just made poor decisions too about attacking and blocking, and I forgot to crew my Smuggler's Copter one time. Yeah, it was ugly. I'm actually kind of amazed that we went as high as 50%, because I think a good player playing this deck probably would have done even better than me. I don't think I actually am the worst Magic player you've ever seen, but this week I definitely wasn't doing as well as I should have, so sorry about that. Hopefully next week I'll be back on my game, back on my A game. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I will see you next time. Hey guys, Bobgar here. I just really wanted to quickly say, if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. If you enjoy my content in general and would like to see more of it, subscribe. I'll be coming out with more content in the future. And please leave me comments and let me know what I'm doing right, what I'm doing wrong, both in terms of production and in terms of my play and my deck building and all that. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I will see you guys next time.